Welcome. This video is documenting this prediction that the stock market will lose 13% in one day on August 18th, 2026. What I mean is that one of the main US stock indexes, probably the NASDAQ, but possibly the S&P 500 or the Dow Jones Industrial Index, will lose 13% in one day on August 18th, and that U.S. warships will be destroyed on December 10th, 2026. The date that this video was posted proves that this prediction is being made ahead of time, as does this time-stamped email. As we can see here, this email was composed on July 31st. If you are skeptical for some reason, please email me and I will forward this to you. However, given the post date, there is no reason why you should be skeptical. I do not have an inside connection at all of the social media platforms where I can ask to readjust the date, if that were even possible. And so this prediction is quite specific. It isn't vague. We're talking about specifically a market crash, a black swan event day on which 13% will be lost in the index on August 18th, a specific date even. And then we are talking about US warships being sunk or destroyed on a specific date. When these predictions come to pass, it will prove what I am saying. And that is the purpose of the prediction. I know far better than you or anyone the reason and purpose for these predictions that are from God. And first and foremost, it is to state clearly that the righteous Christian God of the Bible, the God of Israel, is the true God. All other worldviews are not true. It is not true to say that, like the Eastern New Age, modern, collective consciousness, whatever you want to call it, worldview, says that all faiths are different paths up the same mountain. That in itself is a worldview. And as such, it is subject to the comparison to other worldviews. The Christian biblical worldview is quite exclusive. Either it is true, or the worldview that all religions are different paths up the same mountain is true, but they both cannot be true. The earth is either round or it is flat. It cannot be both. It is not subject to opinion. The nature of God is not relative. It is not subjective. There is an ultimate truth to the reality of God. The different worldviews fundamentally conflict with each other, contrary to what the Hindu, Eastern, modern, New Age, collective consciousness worldview would like to say, because they haven't thought about things clearly. But when we think about it clearly and we know some basic things, these worldviews fundamentally conflict with each other. They cannot all be true. Either one of the world's worldviews is true, or none of them are, but they can't all be true. The philosophy of logic 101. A can't equal not A. So when this prediction comes to pass, there's no debate. And I know far better than you how these predictions are known ahead of time. And why? And it is to disprove your collective consciousness. God is the universe itself. God is an energy. God is an impersonal being, not a personal being. That is the creator. The word holy in Hebrew means separate from. Separate from the creation, not the creation itself. In other words, God can't be an impersonal energy and the creation itself, and at the same time be a personal being who is holy and not the creation, but the creator of the creation. He cannot be both. Either one of these worldviews is true or the other isn't. The technical terms for these worldviews are pantheism and monotheism. Either one is true or neither are true, but they cannot be both true. That also applies to the various different monotheistic faiths. Either one of the monotheistic faiths is true or none of them are true. But they cannot all be true. Well, you can make the case that Judaism is, or Christianity is Judaism. But modern Judaism is something different. But biblical Judaism is Christianity. But regardless, let's just tackle Islam. Islam is either true or the Christian, Judeo-Christian worldview is true, or neither are true, but they cannot be both true. Okay? And when we understand Islam correctly, it is clearly a religion that is designed to counter Christianity because it is from Satan. Anyone that knows about Islam knows that it is obsessed, literally, with how Jesus is just a prophet and God cannot have a son. I mean, that is the religion in a nutshell. And these predictions will prove that God has a son and that God became a man and that Jesus Christ is God. Okay? Just to be clear. So, that's actually just the beginning of the purpose for these predictions, because there is already an overwhelming amount of evidence for what I have just stated. Of course, these predictions will prove the controversial things that I am saying in this video. And that is the purpose for these predictions. Make no mistake, again, I know far more than you or anyone the reason and purpose for these predictions, and it is to prove once and for all to end the debates regarding these controversial things. These controversial things are case closed, period, when these predictions come to pass. These things that I'll be stating aren't controversial for many people, but for many people, they still are controversial. And it is time to get over these things, as you will see. As I will go, I will explain. And again, this is the reason for the predictions. And the reason for the predictions, if you are a quote-unquote Christian, for example, is not for you to go, oh, cool, neat. You were able to know these things ahead of time from God. That's pretty neat. No, this is not the purpose for these predictions. Like I said, the purpose for these predictions is to prove the controversial things that I'll be saying in this video. And when these predictions come to pass, the wise person will recognize that they need to watch every minute of every video on this channel. Now, what I'll be doing in this video is explaining the reasons for how I know these predictions ahead of time. These predictions on their own are sufficient. I could, if I wanted to, make a video and say, these predictions will prove this, this, and this, and then shut the video off. But I will actually show you how I know ahead of time. And you will clearly see that these reasons for knowing ahead of time are supernatural. No human being is creative enough to concoct these reasons in their own mind. Any semi-wise person will clearly see this immediately. As you will see, this is the case. And so let's begin. We know that through the World Cup, by the way, what I'll be doing is, well, in this case, I did do a little bit more of a write-up than I normally do. Anyway, we know that through the World Cup, God pointed to Psalm chapter 2. So I'm talking to people who already know what I'm talking about, i.e. my friends, and this has already been established in other videos, for example. So I'm going to actually just not elaborate too much on how this was known, because this is an understanding and insight that came through a ton of other insights and other reasons. And so rather than belabor those and make this video 10 hours, we'll just explain these things briefly because they're basic at this point between myself and my friends, and you'll just have to keep up, which won't be difficult because I believe that I can do an adequate job of teaching. It could be that I have a gift for teaching. So we know that through the World Cup, God pointed to Psalm chapter 2, which begins with, quote, "Why do the nations rage?" For example, Spain is an anagram for Psalm. This is an amazing insight. Spain is an actual anagram for the word Psalm. The I resembles an L and the N resembles an M. Spain won its second World Cup title. Spain begat the nation of Argentina. Argentina placed second when they lost to Spain. And it was Argentina's second World Cup final in a row. That's a bunch of twos. Spain's second World Cup, Argentina finishing second and playing in their second World Cup final in a row. And Spain hints at Psalm. So we have Psalm chapter 2. Spain begat Argentina in history. The only goal in Spain's second World Cup final game win against Argentina was scored by Spain's number 7. This was the only goal of the game, number 7. So the World Cup final pointed to Psalm chapter 2, verse 7. I will tell of the decree. The Lord said to me, "You are my son. Today I have begotten you." And again, Spain begat Argentina, and these two nations played each other in the World Cup final. Additionally, Psalm chapter 2 was pointed to through the final World Cup game won by Spain, as in Psalm, in New York. Played in New York, near where two World Trade Center Twin Towers were struck by two planes on 9/11. That's more Psalm chapter 2. Why do the nations rage? It was Lionel Messi's second World Cup final in a row. Going into the tournament, Messi had 911 career goals. In the World Cup, he has worn jerseys number 10 and 19, the only two numbers, which hints at 9/11. That's two ones and a 9. The viral news story at the time of the final game was how Messi had been photographed at the age of 19, bathing an infant who is now the star player for Spain and is now 19 years old. The two star players played each other in the cup final, and it just so happens that when Messi was 19, playing for Barcelona, there was a photographer who was making a calendar of the team, and for the month of January, Messi was to according to due to the photographer's idea, bathe a child. And so there was a draw for which mother would be the lucky mother to be hired to have their baby as part of the calendar, which just happened to be the mother of the future star player of Spain who played Messi in the final at the age of 19 while wearing number 19, and Messi bathed this guy when Messi was 19. In the final game, Messi wore number 10, and the Spanish player, the 19-year-old, wore number 19. That also hinted at 9/11. Number 10 and number 19. The 19th tarot card depicts an infant boy, and in alternate or older tarot cards, the infant boy is sitting on a lion, which is hinted at with 19-year-old Lionel Messi bathing the infant boy sitting in a baby bathtub, as in sitting on the lion, sitting in the bathtub. Lionel Messi bathing him. The 19th tarot card is the sun. And the sun in the images of the tarot cards closely resembles the sun on the Argentinian flag. It's in fact really the same sun. It's the same stylized sun. The sun is a play on words, and God's Son, capital S-O-N, which is mentioned 2 times in Psalm chapter 2. The photo of Messi bathing the infant hints at Messi's own son, who was born on the date 9/11 in the year 2012. Exactly 11 years after Flight 11 with a crew of 11 flew into the Twin Towers that looked like a giant 11 in the 11th state. The ringleader of the hijackers on Flight 11 was the only Egyptian 9/11 hijacker, and he made final preparations for the attack on the World Trade Center while he was in Spain. Spain defeated Messi in the World Cup final. Messi was born 80 days before the date 9/11, and while wearing number 10, Messi scored his record-setting 19th World Cup goal in the 80th minute of the game. Okay, and that's a typo. It wasn't against Egypt. But as you'll see later, it's related to Egypt because it was Jordan. The Israelites escaped Egypt and then went through Jordan to cross into the Promised Land. Anyway, again, Messi went into the tournament with 911 goals, and there's a bunch of 9/11s here going on. As you can see, his son was born on the date 9/11, but Messi himself was born 80 days before 9/11, and when he wore jersey number 10 and scored his 19th World Cup goal, that hinted at 9/11, and that was in the 80th minute of the game. And this is because 80 years prior to this World Cup was the year 46. Messi's son was born on the date 9/11 on the same day that the anti-Messiah, which is hinted at with Messi as an antichrist, anti-Messiah, Messi, the 44th president, read Psalm 46 at the 9/11 memorial on 9/11 in 2012, the same day that Lionel Messi's son was born. And again, the 80th minute and his 80 days born before 9/11, the date, hints at 80 years prior to this World Cup in the year 46. Because of Psalm 46, which was read by the anti-Messiah on the day that Lionel Messi's son was born, on the date 9/11. Now, Messi scored 4 plus 4 goals. We're talking about the 44th president. Messi scored 4 plus 4 goals in the 4 plus 4 games he played in this World Cup tournament that was 40 plus 40 years after the year 46. Messi played in 2 World Cup finals in a row. The 46 World Cup was the second World Cup in a row to be canceled due to World War II. Because of Psalm chapter 2 and what I'm saying now, Psalm chapter 46 are both being pointed to through this Spain World Cup. And again, Spain is an anagram for Psalm. President Trump was responsible for bringing this year's World Cup to the U.S. Trump, God's trumpet, trumpeting the arrival of the 2 anti-messiahs before the second coming of Messiah, was born in the year 46. Trump was born on the date 6/14. And in USA's prophetic first, and God uses firsts for prophetic signs and also records, incidentally, like Lionel Messi's record-setting 19th World Cup goal. Okay, so God uses firsts for signs, and the first loss. So Trump was the U.S. and Trump was hosting. Trump was born on the date 6/14 in 46, because we're now, as I've explained, pointing to the year 46. Trump was born in 46, but on the date 6/14. And in USA's prophetic first, and God uses firsts for signs, World Cup loss, the first World Cup loss for Team USA of the tournament to Turkey. In that game, they scored 2 goals, which were scored by players number 6 and 14. Trump's second in command, Vice President Vance, attended the game. We're talking about a lot of 2s here. 2 goals, second in command. The game in which 2 goals were scored by number 6 and 14 was attended by Trump's second in command and was exactly 2 months after the assassination attempt of Trump in the Hilton Hotel. The ceremonial game ball in the USA-Turkey game was dropped by Paris Hilton. It's like in baseball when a celebrity or a politician throws out the ceremonial first pitch. Paris Hilton threw out the ceremonial game ball to begin this USA-Turkey game, in which 2 goals were scored by number 6 and 14, which hints at Trump, exactly 2 months after the assassination attempt of Trump in the Hilton Hotel. There's, of course, much more to that, explained elsewhere. In the Bible, the king of Egypt is a type for the anti-Messiah. The USA game that pointed to 80-year-old Trump and his birth in the year 46 was 12 days before Messi's goal in the 80th minute of the game against Egypt. Again, this is correct. It was 12 days to the game against Egypt, but that goal wasn't scored in the 80th minute. The 80th minute goal was against Jordan. All right. So everything's fine, just the minor corrections that I've made here. 12 days before Messi's goal, which was also prophetic, as I'll explain, when he played Egypt. Okay, and again, Egypt hints at is a type because of the king of Egypt for the anti-Messiah, and we're talking about Messi, which hints at anti-Messiah. So, and this pointed to Messi's birth 80 days before the date 9/11, on which the World Trade Center was attacked, and pointed to the 80 years ago World Cup in 46 that was canceled. These two games that both pointed to the year 46 were 12 days apart, and the anti-Messiah read Psalm 46 at the 9/11 memorial on 9/11 in the year 12. Which was the day that Lionel Messi's son was born, which hinted at the birth of the anti-Messiah, who is the 44th president. And Messi scored his record-setting 4 plus 4th prime number goal. Well, actually, this again was against Jordan. But what he did do was score his 4 plus 4th goal of the tournament against Egypt. Spain, an anagram for Psalm, won its second World Cup in the 23rd World Cup. 2 times 23 equals 46, which hints at Psalm 46. So there we have it. I've been alluding to how God has been pointing to the year 46 in order to point to Psalm 46, but here's the straightforward formula here. Spain's second ever World Cup win in the 23rd World Cup gives us 2 times 23 and 46. And that's even more relevant too. It's also relevant because it's hinting at a pair of 23 chromosomes. 2 times 23 chromosomes. All right. Likewise, it was Messi's second World Cup final in a row in the 23rd World Cup. That's another 2 times 23. Messi, the GOAT of soccer, which outside the US is called football, played a record-setting 6th World Cup for Argentina. The GOAT of football, American football, and by the way, GOAT stands for greatest of all time. God is playing on this to hint at the GOAT Antichrist, of which there are 2 in Bible prophecy, which is why I am now beginning to talk about the 2 GOATs of football, soccer and American football. So Messi, the GOAT of soccer, played a record-setting 6th World Cup for Argentina. The GOAT of football, American football, is famous for having been selected in the 6th round of the NFL draft. And this is like he's famous for it because it's the story of Tom Brady. He became the greatest of all time, yet he was selected in the 6th round. He was never supposed to be a starting quarterback. It's all prophecy. The story of Tom Brady is arguably the most important sports story in God's prophetic signs, and that's saying quite something because sports are extremely important in God's signs, as you can see with just this video alone. So, again, God uses records. Messi was played in his record-setting 6th World Cup, and the other GOAT of football is famous for having been selected in the 6th round of the NFL draft, and he was selected the 46th prime number overall, 199th, which is the 46th prime number. The first of the 2 GOAT messiahs, Pope Francis, was born in Argentina, which is why Messi plays for Argentina, anti-Messiah. And Pope Francis was born on the date 1217 in Argentina. 1217 is the 199th prime number, or the 46th super prime number. The Argentinian Pope was born on 1217 in 36. The GOAT of football, number 12, led the New England Patriots, which symbolize America because of the Pilgrims and the founding of spiritually of America in New England by the Pilgrims. The GOAT of football, number 12, led the New England Patriots to their first Super Bowl victory with a famous last-minute drive from the 17th yard line with the score tied 17-17 in Super Bowl 36. All right. So we have number 12, the 17th yard line. The Super Bowl was all about the last minute winning drive. That's the thing that Super Bowl was about. The score was tied 17-17, and Brady had like a small amount of time, like a minute or two, from their own 17-yard line. All right? And they went for it rather than play it conservatively and go into overtime, which was risky, of course, because you could overturn the ball deep into your own territory, thereby making it easy to score a field goal to win the game. So this was a dramatic ending. And by the way, this is also prophecy because the rest of Tom Brady's career was known for his last-minute winning drives. I mean, he was Mr. Last-minute winning drive. But it all began with the Super Bowl because it's prophecy pointing to this last-minute winning drive. Again, so it was number 12, and it was all about the 17th yard line with the score tied 17-17, and it was Super Bowl 36. Well, this hints at the date 12-17 and 36, when Pope Francis was born, the GOAT anti-Messiah, as in the GOAT of football, Tom Brady, who was known for this winning drive at the Super Bowl that defined his career and established the rest of his career, if you will. He was never supposed to be a starting quarterback. In fact, the reason why he came in was because of the other player, starting quarterback, being injured in the beginning of the season. But that player had recovered by the end of the season and was ready to play. But Coach Bill Belichick wisely stayed with Tom Brady, who had got the team into the Super Bowl in the first place. Well, that's not even exactly 100% true because Brady got injured in the semifinal game before the game was clearly won. And so the former starting quarterback came in and played the rest of the game and won the game and got them into the Super Bowl. But yet, still, Belichick wisely chose to go with the young Brady, who won the game at the end of the game. That's a big story that God did, all right? Now, there's lots more to that, of course. But this Super Bowl we're talking about, Super Bowl 36, which, by the way, hints at 3 6s and 666. And also 36 is 6 times 6. And also 2 times 18, which is 6 plus 6 plus 6. And the 36th number in a triangle of numbers is 666. In a triangle of numbers, the last number in the 36th row is 666. And 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 all the way up to 36 equals 666. Also, if I recall, this game was played in the 6 plus 6 plus 6th state, Louisiana. It was, that's right. Okay, and so that's more confirmation that what I just mentioned here about the 12, 17, and 36, hinting at Pope Francis, the anti-Messiah, the GOAT, Antichrist. Now, this Super Bowl was after 9/11, when 2 planes struck the 2 towers 17 minutes apart, as in the last minute winning drive from the 17th yard line with the score tied 17-17. That's exactly right. You could even say the 2 hints at the 17-17 tied score. But it was the last minute drive from the 17-yard line, and that hints at the 17 minutes between the 2 towers, and this was the Super Bowl after 9/11. Tom Brady went on to win other Super Bowls, and the last one with the Patriots was 17 years later. And he went into that Super Bowl with 17 Super Bowl records. And him and Coach Belichick had been in 9 out of the 11 Patriots Super Bowls. All right. Well, that was their 9th out of 11. Okay. Now, the Patriots' first ever Super Bowl was Super Bowl 9 plus 11. This didn't include Tom Brady. We're just talking about the Patriots now. The Patriots' first ever Super Bowl was Super Bowl 9 plus 11. And again, the Patriots won the Super Bowl after 9/11, but their first ever Super Bowl was 9 plus 11. And they lost to the Chicago Bears, who famously dominated the league that year with their revolutionary 46 defense. That was the name of their defense. It was the 46 style defense. They called it 46 defense. I don't know exactly why. Well, we know why, because it's from God. But it was called the 46 defense. And the Bears, they're considered to be the best team in history because no one could score against them. I'm exaggerating, of course, but they really shut down other teams' offenses. Big time. Because it was revolutionary and the other teams didn't know how to counter it at the time. It was because it was brand new. They didn't know how to deal with the 46 defense. So in other words, the team that beat the Patriots in the Super Bowl, their first one, the 9 plus 11 Super Bowl, was known for the 46 defense. Chicago, in that Super Bowl, scored 46 points. And they won the game by 36 points, which again hints at 666. And Super Bowl 36, in which the Patriots won after 9/11, but lost by 36 points in the 9 plus 11 Super Bowl. The 44th president, who is from Chicago, as in the Chicago Bears, read Psalm 46 at the 9/11 memorial, which is why the 46 defense in the 9 plus 11th Super Bowl, won by Chicago, where Obama is from. Super Bowl 9 plus 11 was 4 times 4 years, as in the 44th president from Chicago, before the Patriots won the Super Bowl in Super Bowl 36, 666, which was right after 9/11, as in Psalm 46 read on 9/11 by the 44th president. The second of the two anti-messiahs, Obama, the 44th president, moved to Chicago in the same year as the famous 85 Bears, who were known for their 46 defense. Obama's second-in-command vice president became the 46th president. Again, Psalm 2 and Psalm 46. Second-in-command, 46th president. Obama, who moved to Chicago in 85, hosted the 85 Bears at the White House. Because back in 85, it wasn't the tradition yet that all teams go to the White House after winning. So, because Obama was a major fan of this team, he invited them, the team that's considered to be the greatest of all time, to the White House. And that day that they visited him was the Day of Atonement in the Hebrew calendar, which is the date 7/10 in the Hebrew calendar. However, the date that Obama hosted the 85 Bears at the White House was the date 10/7, which is 7/10 outside the US, in Israel, for example, in the Gregorian calendar. So the Gregorian date even also hinted at the Day of Atonement that year. Pope Francis was elected exactly 85 years after the St. Francis Dam collapsed in Los Angeles, as in fallen angels. The two GOATs of football, Brady and Messi, hint at the two goats that were used in ancient Israel in a ritual sacrifice on the Temple Mount on the Day of Atonement, which is symbolic of the two anti-messiahs who will be defeated at the second coming of Messiah on the Day of Atonement in the year 31. The Patriots' second Super Bowl and second Super Bowl loss was in Super Bowl 31, as in second coming of the Messiah in the year 31, when the two anti-messiahs will be defeated on the Temple Mount, as described in Bible prophecy, which is hinted at with the two goats. The Patriots were led by, in the Super Bowl 31, the Patriots were led by Drew Bledsoe. And this name hinted at drawing blood from goats in the sacrifice on the Day of Atonement. The Day of Atonement in the Hebrew calendar is the date 710. After winning Super Bowl 36, 666, the GOAT Tom Brady went on to win 7 Super Bowls in total in 10 Super Bowl appearances. That's amazing, right? Because again, the goats were sacrificed on the Day of Atonement, the date 710, and the GOAT of football won 7 out of 10 Super Bowl appearances. The GOAT's 7 wins in 10 Super Bowl appearances hinted at the GOAT sacrifice on the date 710. Likewise, in GOAT Messi's final World Cup game, he wore number 10, and this was the final World Cup. Likewise, in GOAT Messi's final World Cup game, he wore number 10, and he lost the final game when player number 7 for Spain scored the only goal of the game. 7-10. The GOAT's final World Cup game in the 23rd World Cup was also Messi's second World Cup final in a row, which is at 2 times 23 and Psalm 46. Again, Spain is an anagram for Psalm. Brady famously played for 2 teams and 23 seasons. So just like Messi, how Messi hints at 2 times 23 because of his second World Cup in a row in the 23rd World Cup, and that being his final World Cup, Brady's career finally ended after having played for 2 teams and 23 seasons. And of course, he's very famous for playing 23 seasons because that is a long time to be an NFL player, especially a prime quarterback. And he played for 2 teams. He won Super Bowls with 2 teams. And also an amazing feat. I'm not, to my memory, knowing when any other quarterback won a Super Bowl with 2 different teams. That could be another Super Bowl record that Brady has. 2 times 23 equals 46. Brady retired shortly before he turned 46 years old. Brady briefly retired for 40 days when he was 44 years old. He wears number 12, and 12 equals 4 plus 4 plus 4. So number 12 briefly retired for 40 days when he was 44. 12 is 4 plus 4 plus 4. By the way, when on the day he unretired, 12 rockets hit near the U.S. consulate in Iraq. That's another subject. 40 days after he retired, the 44-year-old number 12 announced he would return for a 23rd season on the same day that the 44th president, who wore number 23 in high school basketball, announced he had COVID and was thankful to have taken the injection, mark of the anti-Messiah, 23 days before he returned, as in Brady returning for a 23rd season, 23 days before he returned to the White House for the first time to celebrate the 12th, as in Brady number 12, anniversary of his nationalized health care with the 46th president. 2 times 23 chromosomes. Because, of course, the mark of the anti-Messiah, SHOT, alters a person's 2 times 23 chromosomes. And Obama read Psalm 46, 2 times 23 chromosomes, at the 9/11 memorial, which hints at Revelation 9/11, the verse that symbolizes the coming demonic possession of people who have taken the mark of the Antichrist, the SHOT, in the year 12, as in the 12th anniversary of Obamacare. That's right. He came and visited the 46th president on the 12th anniversary, and he read Psalm 46 at the memorial of the 12th in the year 12 on the anniversary. And he came on the 12th anniversary of Obamacare, nationalized health care, which hints at the mark of the Antichrist that alters 2 times 23 chromosomes. And again, he came to the White House 23 days after he announced that he had COVID and was happy and thankful to have taken the mark of the Antichrist. That's all about healthcare. And again, that was the day that number 12 announced his return. Both of these men announced through Twitter and he announced his return for a 23rd season 23 days before Obama returned. By the way, that day when they had their announcements and the GOAT of football announced a return for his 23rd season, that was exactly 23 weeks after the famous nationally televised game that was promoted as the Return of the GOAT game, when he and his Buccaneers returned to play New England in New England for the first time. The Return of the GOAT game was 23 weeks before he announced his return for a 23rd season. There's more to that. I'll just give you this too. 44 days after the 44th president returned to the White House and was with the 46th president and also the vice president, Harris, 44 days after that, Harris announced that she had COVID and was thankful to have taken the mark of the Antichrist. Messi played a record 6 World Cups and played his second in a row in the 23rd World Cup. Okay, that hints at 2 times 23. Brady, who played for 2 teams in 23 seasons until he was almost 46, was famously selected in the 6th round of the NFL draft and was also selected in the 6+6+6th round of the Major League Baseball draft by the Montreal Expos. Montreal is French for Mount Royal, which hints at Temple Mount in Jerusalem, where the goat sacrifices were done, where the goat anti-messiahs will be. The Expos is a name derived from the World's Fair Expo 67 in Montreal in the year 67. The same year that the Jews recaptured the Temple Mount on the date 6/7 in the year 67. 67 hints at man united with God, which is the Temple Mount symbolism. 6 being man, 7 God. But 67 is the 19th prime number. 6/7 and the year 67 hint at 19 and 19. Which, by the way, hints at Lionel Messi, who was 19 when he bathed the infant, and then played the infant when the infant was 19. But this also hints at 199. Brady was selected 199th, and in the year 19, played his 9th and last Super Bowl for the Patriots. The year 19 and the 9th Super Bowl hints at 199. The story of Brady began with the Patriots when he was selected 199th by the Patriots, and his last game with the Patriots was in the year 19, and it was his 9th Super Bowl with the Patriots, 199. The 199th prime number is 1217, and the Argentinian Pope was born on the date 1217. Messi, who wore number 19 for Argentina, where the Pope was born, played a record 9 World Cup games in a row while scoring a goal, which hints at 119, and therefore the date 1217 on which the Argentinian Pope was born. The GOAT's 9th game in a row was in which he scored a goal, was against Egypt, which hints at the king of Egypt, who is a type for the anti-Messiah, as in Messi. The twin earthquakes in Venezuela were 39 seconds apart on Messi's 39th birthday. By the way, 39 is 3 times 13, which hints at the date that Pope Francis was elected on, the date 313 in the year 13, and also the year 313 when Rome converted to Catholicism. The worst thing that happened to Christianity. But it was all part of God's plan, of course. I mean, Catholicism is a way of weeding out true Christians from non-true Christians. Because Catholicism isn't a legitimate denomination of Christianity, and that's why a pope, even from Old Testament prophecy, we know this is crystal clear, was always going to be a pope. The Antichrist was always going to be a pope. The office of pope itself is blasphemy, claiming to be the representative of God and the representative of the church, of God's people. I mean, I'm not even going to go there. But what I wanted to go to, and by the way, I'm not anti-Catholic, and I'm not saying Catholics won't be saved. If they will be, it'll be despite their Catholicism and not because of it. But the Pope is a test for them. That's the purpose of the Pope, being the Antichrist. As the prophecy says, come out of her, my people. Because Catholicism is pagan religion wrapped in Christianity. When it converted in 313 AD, it didn't do away with its pagan religion. It simply repackaged it in a wrapper to make it look like Christianity, such as the worship of the fertility goddess, which is now the worship of Mary. All right, now, just for example, of many countless examples. Now, what I was saying was that we've got this pattern of 199, right? Which hints at the birth date of the anti-Messiah. And we got Messi in the 199 pattern too, because he played his 9th game in a row while scoring a goal. And he wore number 19 for Argentina. Although in this one he didn't wear number 19, but he did. And but we have the pattern of 19s already with Messi anyway, because for example, the bathing of the other star player when he was 19. All right. Well, anyway, the GOAT's 9th goal of the game was against Egypt, which hints at the king of Egypt, who is a type for the anti-Messiah, as in Messi. The twin earthquakes in Venezuela were 39 seconds apart on Messi's 39th birthday. The 39th super prime number is 991, which hints at 199. And the Argentinian Pope was born on 1217. And 1217 is the 199th prime number. Messi's record-setting 8th prime number goal, okay, his 19th goal, his 8th prime number goal, in the 80th minute of the game in the 23rd World Cup, in which he scored 8 goals total, was 23 days after after Trump's 80th birthday. So that's a pattern of 8s there. But we've also got 8 and 23. Okay? I'll just repeat that because I should have put this sentence prior to this sentence. Because Isaiah chapter 23 and Revelation chapter 8 speak of the destruction of ships that symbolize America. There are many people that say America isn't in Bible prophecy, and they couldn't be more wrong. And it's very important because the destruction of ships that's spoken of in Revelation chapter 8 is symbolic of America. We know this from Isaiah chapter 23. Like many Revelation passages, they are a parallel with Old Testament prophecy. Isaiah chapter 23, quickly, speaks of the destruction of ancient Tyre. Tyre was a city-state that was strong and successful because it had naturally protection because it was an island. It was surrounded by sea. It wasn't until Alexander the Great built a causeway over to the island that the city was finally conquered after a long, long time. And that's why the signs involving a play on this, like Tylenol and Tyler and Tyreek, all these things are pointing to ancient Tyre. So in other words, ancient Tyre in itself is symbolic of America, all right? But in this passage also, it speaks of, in conjunction with ancient Tyre, Tarshish, and specifically the ships of Tarshish. And we know from all kinds of evidence that Tarshish was Great Britain. They were doing trade with Great Britain. It's not that hard to believe. They went outside of the Mediterranean. It was Great Britain. And the ships of Tarshish is a perfect symbolism for Great Britain, because Great Britain became powerful and an empire on which the sun never set due to its ships, its naval power and merchant ships. And that's why also God set apart, as in holy, Great Britain from the rest of Europe in order to develop this unique culture on which he would use to then birth America, which he would then use to spread the gospel around the world in the 19th and 20th centuries. Long story short, America being the nation of Christian disciples. Now, in this passage regarding the ships of Tarshish, there's mention of the daughter of Tarshish. And that perfectly represents the daughter of the UK culture, the Great Britain culture, America. What other nation are you aware of that's really symbolic of being a daughter of an original nation? So it's the ships of Tarshish and the daughter of Tarshish, and also America's strength is due to its ships, its naval power and merchant ships. Okay, so that's why, this pattern, by the way, is why the Washington, D.C. earthquake occurred on the date 8/23. The earthquake in the capital that was the strongest east of the Rockies in however many years, felt by 1/3 of the population of America, was on the date 8/23. Okay? Just for example, there's all kinds of more proof from God's signs, which I won't get into here. But that's enough, because like I say, I have the authority to not have to go into these things. I just need to say them, and it's the truth, and that's because of the predictions. But I want to explain these things within a reasonable amount of time here. So, And also I can only go so long before I get tired. Speaking of ancient tire. So 8 and 23. So what we have here is Messi's record-setting 8th prime number goal in the 80th minute. Now that's actually correct. Earlier it was a typo. That's correct now. The 8th prime number goal was in the 80th minute of the 23rd World Cup game. And he scored 8 goals total in the 23rd World Cup. But also the 8th prime number goal in the 80th minute was 23 days after Trump's 80th birthday. Okay. Now, again, Isaiah 23 and Revelation chapter 8 speak of the destruction of ships, which symbolize America. The 3 plus second prime number of days after Trump's birthday, that would be 11 days, okay? Bear with me. On the date 6/14, the USA lost by a score of 3-2, hence the 3 plus second prime number, in their first World Cup game, first loss, in the tournament hosted by Trump. And his birthday is on 6/14, his 80th one. USA's goals were scored by players number 6 and 14. The date 6/14 this year was 80 years after Trump was born in 46. Donald J. Trump is equal to 888 in English gematria. The name Jesus in Greek is equal to 888 in Greek gematria, the language the Bible is written in. The 8th prime number of days plus the 8th prime number of days after the 80th anniversary of Trump's birth in 46, the Boston Red Sox won their franchise-tying number of games, wins in a row. All right? Again, 3 eighths give us Trump. The 8th prime number of days, which is 19 days, plus the 8th prime number of days, a total of 39 days. But it gives us 2 eighths. And this is after the 80th anniversary of Trump's birth. Gets us to this day, which was July 22nd, when the Boston Red Sox won their franchise-tying record, and Boston symbolizes America, won their franchise-tying number of wins in a row. And that was in the year 46. The Sox tied the record set 80 years ago in 46. In other words, Trump's 80th birthday is pointing back to the year 46, the same year that the Red Sox won 15 games in a row. Now, this 8th plus 8th prime number of days, 39 days, is the 15th semi-prime number, a number only divisible by 2 other prime numbers, and God uses this. And it was 15 games in a row that they won. So that really does confirm everything. Also, Trump is the 47th president, and the 15th prime number is 47. For more confirmation for you that this Boston Red Sox streak really does tie to Trump's birthday this year, which again was his 80th, and 80 years ago was when the prior record was set. And this year they tied it and didn't beat the record. So the record tying number of wins in a row this year of 15 pointed back 80 years ago to the year 46. And as you know, I've already established the significance of 46 in this video already, so we're on to something, in other words. And again, we also have Messi involved here too because of the 80th minute and the 23rd World Cup, which establishes the 80th minute, which further points to this 80 years back to the year 46. And again, that year, 46, was the year in which the second World Cup in a row was canceled due to World War II. And again, Messi was in his second World Cup final in a row, and Spain won its second World Cup ever. Okay, so, just that now it's clear, I think. The Red Sox streak here points also to the year 46. Okay, now the 15-game win streak achieved on July 22nd was the 8th prime number of days after the streak began. So we had two sets of 8th prime number of days, but one set of 8th prime number of days back was when the streak began on the date 7-3, which hints at three sets of 7, which is the symbolism the Israelites enacted when they marched around Jericho before the walls of security collapsed in God's judgment, and when they blew trumpets. Now, this 7-3 date, when the streak began, was the 8th prime number of days after the 80th anniversary of Trump's birth in 46. The 15-game win streak came to an end with a 5-1 loss. The 15th prime number is 47, and Trump is the 47th president. The Iranian regime that is predicted to sink U.S. warships has been in power for 47 years, which is incidentally why Trump is the 47th president. So you see, that's really, really established. I think that's clear, right? This Red Sox connection here. Now, why did God point to the 46 Red Sox? By the way, the Red Sox that year were led by Ted Williams, who had just returned from World War II as a pilot. He wore number 9. Messi scored a record 9 games in a row with a goal. All right. Anyway. Oh, and that year, Ted Williams won the MVP, as in the GOAT, if you will. The greatest of that year. Now, the 46 Red Sox lost the World Series. Okay, this is why God is pointing to the 46 Red Sox. Because the 46 Red Sox lost the World Series. As in the second win for Spain in the 23rd World Cup, as in 2 times 23, and Psalm 46, as in the 46 Red Sox losing the World Series. As in Messi losing in his second World Cup final in a row in the 23rd World Cup, 2 times 23, for Psalm 46. So God is still pointing to Psalm 46, even also through the 46 Red Sox. And furthermore, the birth of Trump in 46, God's trumpet. So the 46 Red Sox lost the World Series in the famous 8th inning of Game 7. The series only went 7 games. They lost in the 8th inning, the famous 8th inning of Game 7, with a run scored by Enos Slaughter in his quote-unquote mad dash to home plate, with the score tied at 3-3. So the series was tied. Well, actually, the series was also tied 3 games to 3. Didn't realize that. Yeah, but the score in the game was tied 3-3, getting close to the end of the series, which is Game 7, in the 8th inning, and there's only 9 innings. Okay, so Revelation 8:9, quote, "A third of the ships were destroyed," unquote. And again, this passage is symbolic. It symbolizes the destruction of America. All right, I've explained it, but I'm also saying the prophecies or the predictions here prove everything I'm saying. Now, it's a third of the ships. That's why the score was 3-3. And the series was tied 3 games to 3. Because this hints at 33 and 33%, which is a third. Amazing. Now, the 46 Red Sox 15-game win streak came to an end on the date 5/10, May 10th in 46. Exactly 80 years and 7 months, as in the 8th inning of Game 7, before U.S. warships, the score 3-3, a third of the ships were destroyed, are predicted to be destroyed in a slaughter, as in Enos Slaughter and his mad dash at sea on December 10th this year. It will be a second 9/11. That's why if you've watched the other videos, the theme of twins, the twin earthquakes, the twin towers, there's a second 9/11 coming on December 10th, which will be again 80 years and 7 months after the streak ended in 46 for the Red Sox, Boston, which symbolizes America. It also, I think, hints at the Red Sea, the Red Sox, but I'm not sure if the ships will be in the Red Sea, but it seems like maybe. Anyway, and again, the Red Sox 46 year came to an end, as in the end of America, or the end of the world, in the 8th inning of Game 7, which is why the 80 years and 7 months, exactly, to the predicted day of the ships being sunk, destroyed. And I think it'll be 3 of them. 2 U.S. aircraft carriers and another ship. Just like 2 towers and the other smaller building, Building 7. 3 buildings on 9/11. The end of the 2026 Red Sox win streak pointed to the 46 Red Sox World Series loss and Slaughter's mad dash and winning run with the score tied 3-3, and the series tied 3 games to 3. The 2026 Red Sox streak ended 3 days after player number 7 scored his winning goal, as in 3 sets of 7, or Game 7, and the score tied 3-3, if you will, in the World Cup for Spain. This 3 days between the World Cup final that pointed to Psalm 46 and the end of the Red Sox's streak that pointed to the 46 World Series and Slaughter's mad dash with the score tied 3-3 hints at the destruction of a third of the ships, which symbolizes America and the destruction of America. Pitchers on the pitching mound symbolize the anti-Messiah on the Temple Mount in Bible prophecy. The record-tying win streak for the Red Sox, 40 plus 40 years after their prior streak, had Red Sox pitcher number 44 close the 9th inning for his 23rd save of the season. With this save, number 44 tied for 9th place in career saves. The 44th president, who wore number 23 in high school basketball, was inaugurated in 2009, as in number 4 in the 9th inning, getting his 9th save in his career, or tying for 9th place, I should say, with the 23rd save of the season. 9, 23, and 44 hints at the 44th president who wore 23 in high school basketball, the basketball president who was inaugurated in 2009. And this is how God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections works, which is only being explained on this channel. It works on the principle of second and third and multiple witnesses confirming a matter, as the Bible says is required. And this is what makes what is being explained on this channel true and not a product of one's imagination and different and unique than everything else on the internet that claims to be an analysis of God's prophetic signs. And if we think about it, one simple way in which God would provide a second witness for us is through pairing certain numbers together, such as 9, 23, and 44. And I know these are the numbers because I have been studying his big picture of signs, patterns, and connections from morning until night for more than full-time hours for more than 8 years. And these are the building blocks of God's signs, is what I'm saying. And as I've just demonstrated, the building blocks of God's true big picture of signs, which is only being explained in this channel, identify the Antichrist. And this is the time to bring up a subject that will end right now, a debate. It is for the evangelicals that love to do it, it's time to stop playing the Antichrist guessing game. Your theology is incorrect. And I know it's kind of like blasphemy almost. It's almost, and I'll tell you why. It almost feels like blasphemy to say you know for sure who the Antichrist is. Why is that? You are supposedly, quote unquote, allowed. You have the freedom to play the Antichrist guessing game, but you're not, I don't know, this Christian evangelical culture, you're not allowed to say with authority who the Antichrist is. But why is that? It's rooted in your false theology, your false salvation doctrine, your soteriology, which is why it almost feels like blasphemy, and why, although many don't even know why, the culture has said you are not allowed to talk about who the Antichrist is. But it is ultimately all deception from Satan. God has clearly identified the Antichrists in Bible prophecy, including Old Testament prophecy. There wouldn't have been a Protestant Reformation without the knowledge that the Pope is the Antichrist. The fact that this has been lost in evangelical culture in the last 50 years is part of the sign that we know we are in the end times, because the maximum amount of people need to be fooled. But 50 years ago, most evangelicals knew this. What's happened in the last 50 years? Well, another thing has happened, the rise of Calvinism and sovereign grace, which is related to how this doctrine of you can't know the identity of the Antichrist has come about. Through 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, when Paul speaks of the identity cryptically. Yet at the beginning of the chapter, he says to the Thessalonians that they know who he's talking about. So why is he speaking cryptically? And why did he call the Antichrist, why did he refer to the Antichrist as a he and a what? Why did he do that? It is not because he's referring to the Holy Spirit and the Holy Spirit being removed, which is part of this dispensationalism and free grace, which is the cousin of Calvinism and sovereign grace. The Nicolaitan doctrines of our day that Jesus said he hates and is coming to make war with the sword of his mouth on those that teach and have the works that are a product of this doctrine. A product of this doctrine is the Antichrist guessing game. The reason why Paul was referring to the Antichrist as a he and a what was because he was referring to the emperor moving the capital from Rome to Constantinople, thus paving the way for the rise in power of the bishops of Rome, because the bishop of Rome is the Antichrist. And he spoke cryptically because had anyone been in possession of his letters, they would have been in danger if he had spoken openly about Rome and the bishop of Rome. Okay, and so when this prediction comes to pass, enough is enough. If you want to ignore this and continue playing the Antichrist guessing game and continue to follow your sovereign grace theology, etc., once saved, always saved, and all of that, go right ahead. But I've already told you now that I have the authority to tell you that the purpose of this prediction is to disprove these things, including your theology. And to tell you with authority that it is the Nicolaitan doctrine of our day, preached by the Nicolaitans. The word Nicolaitan means leader of, or ruling over the laity. The formula of coming together changed very little after the Protestant Reformation. It still looks like the Catholic Church. You got the alpha male of the group getting paid to perform on a platform for 45 minutes to an hour. And Paul forbid, and Jesus forbid preaching for money. And the passages they quote to support this are twisted out of context. And if anything, Paul is talking about preaching for food. But it wasn't the form of preaching that what goes on in churches. It was traveling evangelists. That's just one way in which they are the Nicolaitans of our day. But the sycophant followers of pastors are also Nicolaitans. As John said, "For you know you do not need a teacher." And Jesus forbid calling anyone your teacher, which is what the word pastor means, or priest, or reverend, or whatever. As John said, we have the Holy Spirit. We do not need a teacher. We even have the Bible now. All right, that's enough of that subject. So, where was I now? I was in this paragraph, and I was saying that pictures on the pitching mound symbolize the Antichrist on the Temple Mount. Now, the Red Sox streak came to an end, right? 40 plus 40 years after the prior streak, and the closing pitcher was number 44. But he pitched in the ninth inning, and he tied for ninth place for career saves, and it was his 23rd save of the season. That's clearly Obama. And again, Boston symbolizes America. Now, the pitcher, number 44 save, and the Red Sox's win streak pointed to the 46 Red Sox led by Ted Williams, who wore number 9 after his return from World War II. The 46 World Cup was the second in a row to be canceled due to World War II. This pointed to Psalm 46, which was read by the 44th president, who was inaugurated in 2009, at the 9/11 memorial, which hints at a second 9/11 that is being predicted. Pitcher number 44 tied pitcher number 43 for career saves. The 43rd prime number is 191, which hints at 9/11. 44 plus 43 equals 87, which hints at 80 years and 7 months from the end of the 46 Red Sox streak, because again, this pitcher number 44 pitched the prophetic game, which tied number 43 at the end of the Red Sox streak. Therefore, it points back to the Red Sox streak 40 plus 40 years ago, which is again 80 months and 7 days before the predicted second 9/11 and the sinking of 2 U.S. aircraft carriers and the end of America's winning streak. That's right. The end of Boston's winning streak hints at the end of America's winning streak and the arrival of the Antichrist through what I've just explained. The American president. Obama, future president. Pitcher number 44 tied Dennis Eckersley for career saves. Dennis Eckersley gives us D and E, his initials, which gives us the 4th and 5th letter of the alphabet, which gives us 45. 44, pitcher number 44, plus 45 equals 89. Which hints at Revelation 8:9, quote, "A third of the ships were destroyed," unquote, which again symbolizes the destruction of America. The Red Sox's 15-game win streak pointed to the Red Sox's 15-game win streak in 46, and Slaughter's World Series winning run in 46. Trump is the 15th prime number president. The Red Sox's 15th win in a row this year was the 8th prime number plus 8th prime number of days after the 80th anniversary of Trump's birthday in 46. Trump's birthday, and I explained that earlier, the 888 gives us Donald J. Trump equal to 888. Trump's birthday was 4 plus 6 days before the slaughter in Caracas from the twin earthquakes that occurred the 15th semi-prime number of seconds apart on the 15th semi-prime number birthday of Messi, anti-Messiah. The earthquakes, the 15th semi-prime number of seconds apart on Messi's 15th semi-prime number birthday, were the 15th prime number percent, 47%, of a calendar year after the 15th prime number president captured Maduro in Caracas. The eagle is a symbol for America, is a symbol of America. The U.S. ships that circled Caracas prior to Maduro's capture hinted at Jesus' statement about eagles circling the carcass, as in slaughter, as in America's ships. Matthew 24:28. Wherever the corpse is, there the vultures will gather. This is an ancient Jewish idiom that means that to know what is coming, one must watch for the signs. From the signs, we can know that what is coming is death in the destruction of U.S. warships on December 10th, 2026. And by the way, Amos 3:8. For God does nothing without his servants first knowing. And yes, no one knows the hour or the day. The most quoted verse in the Bible is misinterpreted and mistranslated, and the doctrine of imminence is from Satan. Jesus commanded his disciples to watch for his return. Obviously, that means watching the timing of the return. The wise men knew the timing of the birth. We can know the timing of the second coming. Those who are wise. Jesus also, in that verse about the no one knows the day, had a parenthesis. What do parentheses mean? Brackets. In the parenthesis, he talks about Noah, who, guess what? Knew the day. Just as Lot, another servant, knew the timing of the destruction. Revelation 3:3. Jesus speaking. Therefore watch. For if you do not watch, you will not know the day or the hour. Therefore, if you do watch, you will know the day and the hour. And that's just the scratching the surface of prophecy that contradicts the no one knows the day or the hour interpretation. But, to be fair, Jesus did hide the knowability of knowing for a good reason. And so, no. This whole compromise of, well, we can know the quote-unquote season, that's silly. That's silly. There's a specific, for example, there's a specific number of days given Daniel chapter 12 to the end. Why were a specific number of days given if the specific day wasn't knowable? The day is knowable. I just proved to you in many ways. The word knowing in that passage is a different verb than the word knowing 3 verses prior to that. The word knowing in that passage, no one knows the day, actually means no one has seen the day. It's different than the other Greek verb for knowing that just comes prior to it. All right. Anyway, again, I know far more than you the reason and purpose for these predictions, and it is to prove these controversial things. So we can stop with we can know the season stuff. We can know more than the season. And as I'm demonstrating, to the shock, I'm sure, of many quote unquote watchers, we can know far more than simply the rapture date. Okay. So Messi went into the World Cup tournament with 911 goals. He lost the World Cup final exactly 119 weeks after the path of totality of the solar eclipse first entered the U.S. over the border wall of security over Eagle Pass, Texas. Before going over the home of Paul Simon, the composer of El Condor Pasa, as in the Eagle Pass, as in the eagle circling over the corpse, the carcass, as in Caracas. Okay, the eclipse entered the U.S. over Eagle Pass and then went over Paul Simon's home, the composer of El Condor Pasa. And Simon's most recent album is his 15th solo album, which is titled 7 Psalms, which he was instructed in a dream to make and to title it 7 Psalms. And so this 15th solo album is part of this pattern here, because the 15-game win streak came to an end, and the earthquakes that were the 15th semi-prime number of seconds apart on Messi's 15th semi-prime number of birthday were the 15 prime number of percent after the capturing of Maduro in Caracas, which hinted at the eagle ships circling the carcass. Okay. On the day that Messi lost the World Cup final, the official death toll from earthquakes was 5,208. Paramedics search for survivors. That's what they do. The last episode of the TV show Emergency, a show that inspired the paramedic revolution, that's a literal part of history. Were it not for the show, it wouldn't be like it is today, maybe, because at the time there were only a handful of paramedic units in California, and that's about it. The final episode, though, aired on the date 5/28 in the year 77. But that's why the official death toll on the day of the World Cup final was 5,208. Again, the earthquakes occurred on Messi's birthday, his 39th, and they were 39 seconds apart, the twin earthquakes. As in twin or two U.S. aircraft carriers slaughter, emergency. But it's an emergency for the world. The second World Cup win for Spain in the 23rd World Cup hinted at Psalm 46, which was read by the anti-Messiah on the date 9/11 near Wall Street, which hints at walls of security collapsing, 3 sets of 7. In the book of Joshua. God repeats a number 3 times for emphasis of its symbolic meaning. The World Cup final in New York that pointed to Psalm 46 is 4 plus 6 plus 4 plus 6 plus 4 plus 6 days before it is predicted that the stock market on Wall Street in New York will collapse. I just want to back up. The World Cup final, the winning goal was scored by number 7, and the World Cup was hosted by 3 nations. That's another 3 sets of 7. But God repeats a number 3 times for emphasis of its symbolic meaning. And as I've been explaining here, the big thing is how the World Cup pointed to Psalm 46. But the World Cup final is a 3 repeat, because God does that, of 4 plus 6 plus 4 plus 6 plus 46 days before the predicted stock market crash on Wall Street but it'll also be the stock markets around the world. It is also predicted that this loss will be 13% in one day, and this was confirmed through the performance in the halftime show of the final of the singing group BTS. BTS gives us the second, 20th, and 19th letter of the alphabet, which gives us 41, which is the 13th prime number. While they were performing, in the background on the big Jumbotron thing were falling coins with the dollar signs on them. The predicted 13% loss, as in fall, of the stock market in one day will be the second largest one-day loss in history. It's this theme of twins that are not only in the World Cup final and also the halftime show, which I've explained in another video. But it'll be the second largest one-day loss in history when there's a 13% loss in the stock market. Psalm 46. God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. Therefore we will not fear, though the earth will give way, though the mountains be moved into the heart of the sea, though its waters roar and foam, though the mountains tremble at its swelling. There is a river whose streams make glad the city of God, the holy habitation of the Most High. God is in the midst of her. She shall not be moved. God will help her when morning dawns. The nations rage. The kingdoms totter. He utters his voice. The earth melts. The Lord of hosts is with us. The God of Jacob is our fortress. Come, behold the works of the Lord, how he has brought desolations on the earth. He makes wars cease to the end of the earth. He breaks the bow and shatters the spear. He burns the chariots with fire. Be still and know that I am God. I will be exalted among the nations. I will be exalted in the earth. The Lord of hosts is with us. The God of Jacob is our fortress. Tom Brady was selected 199th in his draft. 199 is the 46th prime number. The first player selected in Tom Brady's 2000 NFL draft was Courtney Brown by the Cleveland Browns. The Browns were founded in the year 46, and their first head coach was Paul Brown. The Browns Stadium is known for its Club 46 exclusive area, a nod to their founding in the year 46. A nickname for Cleveland is the Sixth City because it used to be the biggest city in the U.S. in the year 1910, which hints at 9/11. Brady was selected in the 6th round of the draft at the 46th prime number selected. Brady, the GOAT, won the Super Bowl after 9/11. The Browns won their first game ever, their first ever game. In their first ever game, they won in the year 46. They were founded in 46, and in the first game, they won, and the score was 44-0. In other words, the first player selected in the Tom Brady draft pointed to the Browns' first ever game that they won. Brady was selected 46th prime number, the Browns in 46, and that first game was 44-0, which identifies the GOAT Antichrist, the 44th president. The 6th City Browns proceeded to win 6 more games in a row after winning 44-0. Brady was selected in the 6th round. The GOAT Antichrist is the 44th president. The 4th hijacked plane was hijacked over Cleveland. I should say the 4th hijacked plane was hijacked over Cleveland before it crashed with 44 people on board. In their first season, the Browns won their league's championship after a season record of 12-2. 122 is the equivalent of the name Pope Francis in simple English gematria. A equals 1, B equals 2, C equals 3. And it is equivalent to the name San Francisco in simple English gematria. And San Francisco lies on the 122nd meridian line. The Browns' first ever loss in their 4+4th ever game was to the San Francisco 49ers. 49 equals 7 times 7. The Browns won their first 7 games before losing to the 49ers 7 times 7. That's 3 sets of 7. And also, Brady went on after the draft to win 7 Super Bowls, which is the record. So, Brady's draft identifies both antichrists, as we can see in this paragraph. And 46 is relevant to all of this too, because the 2 antichrists will enforce the mark of the antichrist that alters a person's 2 times 23 pairs of chromosomes. 2 times 23 is 46. The GOAT's selection at 199th, or the 46th prime number, contrasts with the first player selected in his draft. Because the story about Brady, again, like I said, is how he was never supposed to be a starting quarterback, and he ended up becoming the GOAT, greatest of all time. So the story begins with this peculiarity of how he was drafted near the end of the draft. The 46th prime number. But that contrasts with the first player selected in his draft. In other words, by doing this, God pointed to the first player selected in his draft, which was the first selection of Courtney Brown by the Cleveland Browns in the year that the GOAT was selected 46th prime number. It points to the first season of the Browns in 46 that was coached by Paul Brown, and points to the first ever Browns game in which they won 44-0, which identifies the GOAT Antichrist, the 44th president, who read Psalm 46 at the 9/11 memorial, and the GOAT of football won the Super Bowl after 9/11. The first player and the 199th player selected hints at 1 plus 199 equals 200 equals 90 plus 110, which hints at 9/11. Obama read Psalm 46 at the 9/11 memorial on the date 9/11. And again, 199 is the 46th prime number. Courtney Brown, selected by the Cleveland Browns, hints at C and B, the third and second letter of the alphabet, which hints at 32, the equivalent of the name Obama in simple English gematria. The first player selected, named Brown, selected by the Browns, hints at the first Brown president. Right? The first player named Brown, selected in Tom Brady's draft, and Tom Brady hints at the GOAT Antichrist. the first player named Brown selected by the Browns since it's the first Brown president. The first ever Browns game was won by the Browns 44-0. The first Brown president was the 44th president. Tom Brady's first ever game that he started, in that game, his team scored 44 points. Tom Brady, number 12, played in his first game ever 12 days after 9/11. Number 12 replaced number 11, who was injured, the starting quarterback. So this was in the first game that he started, his team scored 44 points, okay? But that was his second game ever, because the first game ever was when he number 12 replaced number 11, which hinted at the 11th hour, going into the 12th hour. A phrase Jesus coined, which is in English an idiom that means last chance, time is running out. As in the 9/11 warning, last chance to repent and turn back to God. Which is why it was Flight 11 with a crew of 11 that flew into the Twin Towers. It looked like a giant 11 in the 11th state. But it's the 11th hour going into the 12th hour of darkness. That is the idiom, which is why number 12 replaced number 11. It's the transition from the 11th hour into the 12th hour of darkness. The phrase that Jesus coined, the 11th hour. Number 11 in the game was hit hard in the side by New York Jets linebacker, which hinted at 9/11, and the Jets that hit hard the side of the towers, the Twin Towers, it looked like a giant 11. That's amazing. This historic game in which Brady began his career. He wasn't ever supposed to be a starting quarterback, but the starting quarterback, number 11, was hit hard in the side by the New York Jets linebacker. In New York, by the way, the game was played in New York, and the towers looked like a giant 11. And it was number 12 that replaced this guy, and it was 12 days after 9/11. Now, the towers that were hit hard by Flight 11 with a crew of 11 looked like a giant 11. Number 11, Drew Bledsoe, almost bled to death with internal bleeding. He almost died, and he didn't know it until later in the evening. A goat was bled and was used in the blood ritual sacrifice on the Day of Atonement. Now, one thing that I didn't mention here is that the Flight 11 originated from New England. It was the New England Patriots playing the New York Jets. The Jets originated from New England and hit the towers. It looked like 11. And on this New England Jets game after 9/11, player number 11 was hit hard in the side by the New York Jets player. Stunning. Flight 11 originated from New England. 12 days after 9/11, player number 12, the GOAT, replaced number 11 and then went on to play in 9 Super Bowls for the New England Patriots. The first one being after 9/11. 9 Super Bowls after replacing number 11, right? 9/11. The GOAT's 9th Super Bowl with New England was 17 years after his first Super Bowl with New England. That was after 9/11. And that hinted at, of course, the 2 planes that were 17 minutes apart. The first and last Super Bowl for Brady with the Patriots were 17 years apart, which hinted at the 2 planes that were 17 minutes apart, because the first Super Bowl was right after 9/11. The second plane had a crew of 9, and it hit the second tower 17 minutes after the first plane, which was Flight 11 with a crew of 11. By the way, the second plane had 56 passengers. 5 plus 6 is 11. The crew of 9 gives us 911. It's the same with the first plane, the crew of 11, and the 81 passengers. 8 plus 1 equals 9. Speaking of 9 crew and 5 plus 6 passengers, the Dow was closed on that day of 9/11 at 9,506. And that's Wall Street in New York, where the towers were. 12 days after 9/11, number 12, the GOAT, replaced number 11, and the GOAT was selected the 46th prime number. Exactly 11 years after 9/11, the GOAT Antichrist read Psalm 46. There you go. The GOAT Antichrist, 11 years after 9/11, the GOAT of football replaced, the career began when he replaced number 11. The first player selected in Brady's draft was Courtney Brown by the Cleveland Browns. The Browns won their first ever game 44-0. In Brady's first ever game as a starter, his team scored 44 points. The game was against the Indianapolis Colts. Brady's first ever game against the Indianapolis Colts, against his, what would become his rival, the star quarterback, Peyton Manning. Manning wore jersey number 6 plus 6 plus 6, as in 666, the Antichrist, and Peyton Manning was known for always shouting Omaha before every play. Omaha hints at the Antichrist 666, Obama. Again, Peyton's jersey 666, 6 plus 6 plus 6. He always shouted Omaha, and he was wearing 666, which identified the Antichrist 666 as Obama. Furthermore, actually, it just came to me, but it's quite obvious. I should have seen this. The 666 in Bible prophecy is associated with a name. And here we have number 666 shouting out Omaha before every play. Omaha is a name. Manning won one Super Bowl for the Colts, which was against Chicago. Obama is from Chicago. In the Super Bowl that the Colts won, the GOAT of kicking, the greatest of all time of kicking in football, player number 4, won his 4th Super Bowl. In that Super Bowl, number 4 kicked 3 field goals. That's 444, which adds up to number 12. Because his 3 other Super Bowl wins were with Brady, number 12, and the Patriots. This is another way in which Manning points to the Antichrist through also the GOAT, Brady. Number 4 kicked the winning field goal as time expired in the Super Bowl after 9/11. So I talked earlier about the prophetic game-winning drive of the Super Bowl after 9/11, which all led to the kicking of the field goal as time expired. That field goal was kicked by player number 4, his first of 4 Super Bowl wins. The Indianapolis versus Chicago Super Bowl was played on the date 2/4/7, February 4th, 2007. Exactly, and God repeats the number 3 times for emphasis of its symbolic meaning. 7 times 26 plus 7 times 26 plus 7 times 26 months after Obama was born. Exactly. G726 is the word in the concordance, the Greek concordance, for rapture, which is a reference. It is this event in which God's faithful will be rescued from the Antichrist, Obama. Which is why this Super Bowl that pointed to Obama, as I'm explaining, connected to the birth of Obama. The two cities in the Super Bowl represented were Indianapolis and Chicago, and they were geographically the closest ever two cities in a Super Bowl. They're just down the street from each other. So God uses records for signs. It was also the first ever Super Bowl in which both teams had a black head coach. It was also the first Super Bowl that all the players wore black shoes because of this. The game was played in the 9 plus 9 plus 9th state, flipped upside down to 666, and it was 6 days before Obama, not after, that's a typo, before Obama announced his bid to become the first black president, as in the first Super Bowl in which both coaches were black. President, coach, head coach, first black president, first black coaches. Obama announced in the capital of the 9 plus 11th state, he announced his bid in the capital of the 9 plus 11th state, where the 4 times 4th president announced his bid for the White House. Obama would become the 44th president when he announced where the 4 times 4th president announced. And it was the 9 plus 11th state. The Indianapolis versus Chicago Super Bowl was Super Bowl 41. 41 is the 13th prime number. And in the Bible, 13 is symbolic of the Antichrist, who for one thing is described in Revelation 13. Nimrod, a type for the Antichrist, was the 13th generation from Adam, and Haman, another type, persecuted the Jews on the 2 13th days of the month. And Obama represented District 13 in Chicago in the state Senate before running for U.S. Senator in 2004 and then becoming the 44th president. Okay, I just realized something huge here as I was going through the information here. We have something huge here. Okay, so Obama represented District 13 as the state senator before he ran for U.S. Senator in the year 2004. This is part of a pattern that God has established, which is why I was able to recognize it, because it's already been well established, this pattern of pairing 4 and 13 in order to hint at, for one thing, 4 times 13, which is equal to 52, which is the equivalent of the word ship in simple English gematria. This video has already talked about the predicted sinking of ships. What is absolutely stunning is that the date it is predicted that the U.S. ships will be sunk on December 10th this year will be exactly 19 years and 10 months after Obama announced his bid for the White House. 19 years and 10 months hints at 9/11. He announced his bid in the 9 plus 11th state, which actually confirms the 19 years and 10 months connection here to the sinking of ships. And Obama's history is the 13th district before running in 2004, which hints at ship. That's amazing. Wow. So where was I? So Now, it was Super Bowl 41. 41 is the 13th prime number, and in the Bible, 13 symbolizes the Antichrist. Obama represented District 13 in the state Senate before running for U.S. Senator in 2004, and then becoming the 44th president. 444. Goat of kicking. Right? 4 field goals. 3 field goals. 444. But 3 field goals by number 4 in that Super Bowl. 444. The goat of kicking. Number 4 in his 3 field goals. In the 13th prime number Super Bowl. Wow. So that Super Bowl, which as I just explained, pointed to Obama's announcement to become the first black president, that Super Bowl also has 4 and 13. Because the goat of kicking won his 4th Super Bowl, and he won his others with the other goat, Brady. The goat of kicking won his 4th Super Bowl. He's number 4 also. But that Super Bowl was the 13th prime number Super Bowl, which gives us 4 and 13. And again, that Super Bowl in turn pointed to February 10th and the announcement of Obama in the 9+11th state, 19 years and 10 days before the predicted sinking of ships. Absolutely amazing. A video could be made on this in itself. The score in the GOAT's first ever game as a starter against Manning's Colts was 44-13. Wow, that's another 4 and 13 there for you. The 44th president represented District 13. The points difference in that Patriots, which symbolizes America, versus Colts game was 31 points. Okay? 31-point difference in the Colts game. Again, the Colts played in the Super Bowl with Chicago here, but Brady's first ever game as a starter was against the Colts, and the points difference was 31 points. This hinted at the first verse of Isaiah, because it's his first game, Brady's, hints at the first verse of Isaiah chapter 31. Woe to those who go down to Egypt and rely on horses. The Colts are horses. The team Indianapolis Colts is horses. After the 44th president's inauguration, he went down to Egypt to tell the Muslim world that America is no longer a Christian nation. The horse American Pharaoh was the first Triple Crown winner in 444 months after the horse affirmed one in 1978, which affirmed that Obama, the 44th president, is the American Pharaoh. And again, the Pharaoh, king of Egypt in the Bible, is symbolism for the Antichrist. But affirmed one in 1978, the goat Antichrist announced his bid for the White House 1978 days after 9/11. And now we know that day is 19 years and 10 months before the sinking of the ships. This is so huge. So from 9/11, we have 1978 days to his announcement, which is relevant because of the Colts connection I'm explaining here, which gets us to American Pharaoh and the year 1978. He announced 1978 days after 9/11, and 19 years and 10 months later is the predicted sinking of ships. And the score, again, in the game with the Colts, with Brady, also hinted at ship, because 4 times 13 is 52, which equals ship. So way back then, in that first game of Brady's, God was pointing to the coming end of America with the sinking of the ships. The score 44-13 hinted at Isaiah 31:4. Because you can get Isaiah 31:4 out of that, which describes the defeat of the Antichrist on the Temple Mount. This is another reason for the pattern of 4 and 13, by the way. It's because of Isaiah 31:4. Because it describes the Antichrist on the Temple Mount. The goat sacrifice on the Day of Atonement was on the Temple Mount. And this is the GOAT of football we're talking about with this game. And the Colts, as in Isaiah 31, which begins with woe to those who go down to Egypt and rely on horses, which instead American Pharaoh and the American Pharaoh, Barack Obama. For thus said the Lord to me, as a lion or a young lion growls over his prey, and when a band of shepherds is called out against him, he is not terrified by their shouting, as in the Colts Peyton Manning shouting Omaha, or daunted at their noise. So the Lord of hosts will come down to fight on Mount Zion and on its hill. And again, Manning. Oh, you know what? This just occurred to me, and I'm like kind of embarrassed because it just occurred to me. But his number is 6 plus 6 plus 6, which ends at 666. And the reason for the Antichrist's number being 666 is because 6 is the number of man. And we have Peyton Manning. So Peyton Manning shouted Omaha. He played for the Colts, which hints at American Pharaoh. I mean, it's actually pretty. It's just, I don't know what to say. Courtney Brown wore jersey number 90 +1 for the Browns. And Brady was selected 199th. Okay, so I just quickly typed out for my friends because I don't know if they'll listen to the video. The new information here. So I'll just read it quickly again since it's so amazing. Manning wore number 6 plus 6 plus 6. The number of 6 symbolizes man. Man was created on the 6th day of creation, which hints at Manning. Manning shouted Omaha, which hints at Obama. He played for the Colts, which hints at American Pharaoh, Obama. Brady's first game as a starter against Manning and the Colts was 44-13. The 44th president represented the 13th district of Chicago. The point difference was 31 points, which by the way, hints at the second coming in the year 31. Because the goat we're talking about, and it's the goat sacrifice on the Day of Atonement, which hints at the two goats, antichrists, that will be defeated on the Day of Atonement in the year 31. Again, the purpose of these predictions are to prove the controversial things. The date can be known, etc., like I explained. The doctrine of imminence is from Satan. 44-13, the score hints at 4 times 13 equals 52, which is ship in simple English gematria. A equals 1, B equals 2, C equals 3. The 44th president, 13th district, also gives us 4 times 13 and 52 and ship. The 13th district, before running for U.S. Senator in 04, gives us 13 and 4 and 52 and ship. The goat of kicking, number 4, won 4 Super Bowls in the 13th prime number Super Bowl, which gives us 4 and 13 and 52, which equals ship. The other Super Bowls were with Brady, the GOAT. Brady was selected in the 6th round. The first black head coaches in Super Bowl 41, which is what we're talking about with the Colts and Manning and the GOAT of kicking. The first ever Super Bowl with both head coaches being black was, again, 7 times 26 plus 7 times 26 plus 7 times 26 months exactly after Obama was born. But it was also 6 days, as in Brady being selected in the 6th round, before the first black president announced his bid in the 9 plus 11th state on February 10th. And so 9/11, 1978 days, which since that affirmed winning the Triple Crown 444 months before American Pharaoh in the year 1978. So 1978 days gets us to the date Obama announced his bid in the 9 plus 11th state, which is 19 plus 10 years, which since at 9/11 before the predicted sinking of U.S. warships, a second 9/11. One more time, from 9/11, it is 1978 days, which since at the winning Triple Crown winner in 1978, 444 months before American Pharaoh, to the announcement of the 44th president's bid to the White House, which followed the 444, 3 field goals by goat of kicking number 4, etc. First black president, first head coaches, okay? So 9/11, 1978 days to the announcement in the 9+11th state. And all of this hinted at ships, as I explained, and it is 19 years and 10 months exactly, which since at 9/11 to the predicted second 9/11 with the sinking of U.S. warships. God bless. Believe me, I know far better than you how the prediction made in this video was derived. And more importantly, I know far better than you why the righteous Christian God of the Bible has given me a voice through this prediction. If you are a quote-unquote Christian or Muslim, this prediction was not learned through a demon. Be warned that blaspheming the Holy Spirit is the unforgivable sin. If you are a New Ager or New Spirituality person, this prediction was not learned through somehow tapping into the supposed universal collective consciousness. If you are a conspiracy theorist, this prediction was not learned through figuring out a supposed code that the Illuminati and Satanists are using. This prediction was learned through the Bible and through watching carefully the Lord's prophetic signs, which Jesus commanded all Christians to do. Besides proving that Jesus Christ is the Lord, the reason why God has given me a voice through this prediction is to prove that the controversial things that I am saying in the videos on this channel are the truth. Therefore, a wise person will want to watch all of the videos on this channel. What I will also do is create a video or two that summarizes some of the controversial things that the Lord will prove to be true when the prediction being made in this video comes to pass. I will leave links to these must-watch videos in the description box below this video. Again, the purpose of this prediction, that is from God, is to prove these things that I will talk about. And therefore, it would be foolish to not watch the videos that I will leave links for in the description box below this video. Aliens and UFOs are demons masquerading as aliens and UFOs. Most people's spiritual experiences are demonic deception, especially if they are not a true follower of Christ. In the last days, many people who claim to be a follower of Christ will have spiritual experiences that are in reality demonic. God became a man and died a horrible death at the hand of the ruler of this world, Satan, and then defeated death for you, so that you too can overcome death, which is the price that must be paid for sin. It is time to repent, which means to change one's ways and turn to God and become a disciple of Jesus. Do not listen to or follow the example of most quote-unquote Christians. Instead, follow the teachings of Jesus, which most quote-unquote Christians ignore. Like Jesus, you must surrender your life. Put nothing ahead of Jesus, your Lord. Like Jesus, you must lay down your life so that you may live. As Jesus said, one must die first, like a kernel of wheat going into the ground, in order to then grow and produce fruit. And like Jesus said, one must produce fruit, or else like a branch or a tree not producing fruit, they will be thrown into the fire. Jesus was speaking to quote-unquote Christians when he said this. One must die the self in order to be born again. And like Jesus said, one must be born again to enter the kingdom. Like Jesus, you must sacrifice your life for the sake of the coming kingdom. It means to do work that involves some form of sacrifice and risk. To have faith does not mean to intellectually agree. You need to demonstrate your faith through taking action. To have faith means to trust in God's promises. Taking action demonstrates trust and fear of the Lord. the primary reason that the wrath of God is coming upon America is quote-unquote Christians that do not get what I have just explained. The only reason a Christian is alive is in order to help other people become Christians and make it to the kingdom. Do not be deceived by those on the political left claiming to be quote-unquote Christians. There is no such thing as a Christian on today's political progressive left. Jesus said, "Do not think I have come to abolish or change any bit of the law or the prophets of the Old Testament Bible." In other words, the God of the Old Testament Bible is the exact same God of the New Testament Bible. It is essential that you learn about the God of the Bible and his ways. The God of the Old Testament Bible is looking to see who will fear him, and to fear God is not the same thing as quote-unquote revering or honoring God. Through Christ's ransom payment, a Christian is someone who has been redeemed and freed from slavery to sin and Satan. In response, a true Christian recognizes that their life in this world does not belong to them, and they become a willing slave to Jesus for the sake of the kingdom. Please leave a like and upvote the video, and once this prediction has come to pass, share this video with everyone you know, and more, don't stop sharing it everywhere in social media. And don't only put the link to this video or another video on this channel in comments sections of places you typically visit, but importantly, put the link to the video in places you never visit, where people who don't think like you visit. If you are a quote-unquote Christian, nothing in terms of an evangelism tool compares to this video with its prediction. It is a massive bag of gold. Beware of Jesus' warning through the quote-unquote Christian that did nothing with his bag of gold and was banished to hell. Also, read Ezekiel chapter 3 and 33 for this same warning. If you think you might be spending too much time watching videos instead of working and sacrificing for the kingdom through handing out flyers and potentially helping hundreds of people in the same length of time as a video, my flyer is filled with amazing information that people need to know right now, and it points people to the video channel. Now is not the time to be handing out typical evangelical tracts that are largely based in error anyway, such as, quote, "Jesus loves you," unquote, for example. You can hand out the flyer on busy street corners, put them on car windshields in busy parking lots, and put them in mailboxes. Just send the file to your local print shop. You can download the file from the website. Please leave a like and upvote the video, and once this prediction has come to pass, share this video with everyone you know, and more, don't stop sharing it everywhere in social media. It is essential that everyone immediately read the homepage of my website, asteroidprediction.com. If you are watching this on the YouTube platform, please note that not all of the videos are on YouTube. You need to switch to the Odyssey.com or Rumble.com channel, and do it now in case you aren't able to later.